Presenter is Terry Littleton. His thesis is entitled, God Made It Happen, a rhetorical analysis of Jerry Falwell's response to 9/11. Using critical rhetorical analysis, Terry Littleton examines two texts, Listen America, and a televised 700 Club broadcast after 9/11 of the late religious right preacher Jerry Falwell to examine conceptual continuity over 20 years and uncover key ideological concepts mobilized in the rhetoric. While the religious right employs many methods to influence the votes of the evangelical congregation, this paper focuses specifically on Falwell's use of biblical metaphors in his popular evangelical discourse. Littleton examines the fear-mongering used to create hate and paranoia in the audience of these two texts. Terry Littleton.
On September 11, 2001, America was attacked by an Islamic terrorist group. 2 days later, the 700 Club, a quasi-news organization founded and hosted by Pat Robertson, there was an interview between Jerry Falwell and Pat Robertson on the subject 9/11 and the possible reasons for the terrible occurrence.
This is the first time that we've been attacked on our soil. First time, and by far.
Okay, sorry about that.
The worst results. And I fear, as Donald Rumsfeld, the Secretary of Defense, said yesterday, that this is only the beginning. And with biological warfare available to these monsters, the Husseins, the Bin Ladens, the Arafats, what we saw on Tuesday, as terrible as it is, could be minuscule if in fact God continues to lift the curtain and allow the enemies of America to give us probably what we deserve.
Jerry, that's my feeling. I think we've just seen the antechamber to terror. We haven't even begun to see what they can do to the major population.
The ACLU's got to take a lot of blame for this.
Oh, yeah.
I know I'll hear from them for this, but throwing God successfully with the help of the federal court system, throwing God out of the public square, out of the schools. The abortionists have got to bear some burden for this, because God will not be mocked, and when we destroy 40 million little innocent babies, we make God mad. I really believe that the pagans and the abortionists and the feminists and the gays and the lesbians who are actively trying to make that an alternative lifestyle, the ACLU, People for the American Way, all of them who tried to secularize America, I point the finger in their face and say, you helped us happen.
Well, I totally concur.
Sorry about that. Following the rhetorical analysis of the text, namely the televised speech by Falwell and Robertson for their main audience, the 700 Club viewers. This interview is presented as a newscast, both with Falwell and Robertson appearing as if they're reporting factual news. The viewers are mostly Christian evangelicals who seek guidance, counseling, and news from the Christian Broadcasting Network. While this text doesn't encompass the views of the religious right, analyzing this text will give a deeper understanding of the two important leaders and how propaganda is used to sway the audience to fearful intensity. The systematic structure is a narrative argument describing all of those who oppose the views of Falwell and Robertson as having a direct connection to the 9/11 attack on America. It is based on persuasion and influence. Stuart Hall describes the mass communication of television, such as this interview, as, quote, having a complex structure and dominance, end quote. These preachers have a grandfather-like demeanor, with graying hair, possibly signifying wisdom through maturity. Both are dressed in business suits and tie, hair combed, face and makeup done professionally, to add a reputable presentation to their message. Falwell and Robertson have taken this tragic event and turned this into a platform to further their political agenda. Both Falwell and Robertson are key figures in the religious right with a large following. Falwell claims that this terrorist attack should have been foreseen due to the wicked ways of America, and that the act of the tragedy forced many people to pray. Falwell surmised that the way for forgiveness is turning away from the sins of the wicked ways and devoting your life to God, so the land, America, can be restored. Falwell describes this attack as the first on American soil since the 1812 war against Great Britain, and compares this act as, quote, by far the worst results, end quote. Assuming these results of these words were true, it would be a travesty. In the 1912 war, the British occupied portions of the United States for 3 years, and the death toll was 17,000, while the death toll from the 9/11 attack was 3,018 people and less than 1 day long. We see an incongruity in Falwell's illogical deduction of which was worse. The influence Falwell is trying to perceive as worse might be believable by the people who don't have the necessary resources to fact-check his claim. Falwell speaks of monsters as having biological weapons, nerve gas, mustard gas, etc. in this act of 9/11 would be, quote, minuscule if in fact God continues to lift the curtain of enemies of America and give us probably what we deserve, end quote. Falwell and Robertson are setting the stage to scare the audience that these circumstances are some form of biblical crux and that only prayer, faith and prayer can remove the dark clouds of America. They speak of doom and gloom for the entire American population. Robertson warns America, quote, we have just seen the anti-chamber of terror, end quote. Falwell continues to explain the possible destruction by, quote, enemies of America, end quote, because of God's lifting of the curtain, allowing more death to occur, and America deserving it as proper penance. It is as if the divine order has helped the United States become a great nation. Robertson reacts to the problematic discussion by saying the major population, and Falwell cuts him off with a harsh comment. Falwell goes on to change the dynamics of the conversation by saying, quote, the ACLU's got a lot to take blame for this, end quote. The ACLU, American Civil Liberties Union, works to defend individual rights and liberties as defined by the Constitution. How can this organization have any accountability for 9/11? It's as if suddenly the ACLU is blamed for this horrific occurrence. Looking at the ACLU and the Islamic fundamentalists in complicity does not seem to compute under critical analysis. The Islamic terrorists damaged the country, and Falwell implicitly compares this damage as closely related to the ACLU damaging America too. This organization helps America by keeping and improving the civil liberties of all individuals. The fact that Falwell blames them for this tragedy tends to discredit his belief when compared to factual discourse. Certainly, a disconnection is easily considered as unfounded fallacy. Of course, Robertson agrees with Falwell, acknowledging him with a simple, quote, well, yes. This fact is that the Muslim terrorists did this atrocious deed, not the ACLU and their lawyers. This is an absurd statement based on the fear and is an attempt to hold his organization accountable. Falwell goes on to blame more American citizens that he vehemently abhors, namely the federal court system, the abortionists, the pagans, the feminists, the gays, the lesbians, and another upstanding nonprofit corporation called the People for American Way. Unpacking this paragraph further, we see the direct attack by Falwell on the federal court system. Falwell uses this tragedy as a way to blame the ACLU and the federal court system for, quote, throwing God out successfully with the help of the federal court system, throwing God out of the public square, out of the schools, end quote. Looking closer into the words of Falwell, he speaks with evident disdain, describing the potential connection for his understanding of removing God from specific places, i.e. schools and public square. He believes that this unseen God can remove a physical curtain from the United States and let these enemies of America attack unobstructed and kill Americans and damage properties in the most vicious way. In no uncertain terms does this connect to a logical reality. He demonstrates an air of moral superiority as administering this truth to the viewing public. Falwell and Robertson have zealous indignation continuous with narrow-minded intellect, for they claim to speak with God's authority and claim that it should not be questioned. Falwell's next line shows the inconsistent parameters of his conversation. Quote, the abortionists have got to bear some burden for this because God will not be mocked, end quote. One wonders how well Falwell knows the thoughts and emotions of this God he speaks of so reverently as a divine order of things. Falwell continues saying, quote, and when we destroy 40 million little innocent babies, we make God mad, end quote. Of course, we assume that Falwell must have a direct connection to his God for him to know what makes him mad. Remember, his Christian God is male. The killing of babies he speaks of, in his opinion, are the abortionists. The audience that views the show might be inclined to think that these grandfather-like wise men are speaking from a position of authority, and the influence that holds weight with moral obligations of the viewer consent to believe. Falwell speaks with so much persuasive conviction that the watchers are convinced that fact-checking and pondering his message, hypothetically effective, aren't involved in the thinking process. Falwell is again on the offensive, and his hate is palpable in his next sentence as he demonizes more Americans. Quote, I really believe the pagans, the abortionists, the feminists, the gays, and the lesbians who are actively trying to make an alternative lifestyle, the ACLU, People for the American Way, and all of them who have tried to secularize America, end quote. Falwell packs in the specific American citizens that do not think the way he does. Falwell chooses to flip the script and lie to the American people, implying that secularization is as bad as a terrorist attack on the country. Again, we have seen a disconnect between Falwell's belief system and the real world. This country was founded on secular ideology because of the way Europe treated different religions. For instance, Puritan Christianity being one. There are all other Christian faiths that were founded upon in Europe also, as they were not the state religion. In the next sentence, Falwell uses is very important in formulating his views. He accuses certain individuals, stating, quote, I point the finger in their face and say, you helped this happen, end quote. His derogatory remark juxtaposes the fact that this horrible occurrence happened and that the part of America that does not fall under the sway of the religious right has in some mysterious way made this despicable action occur. These evangelicals are using rhetorical devices such as fear and repugnance to entice individuals to become part of their congregations of believers. They use their interpretation of biblical scriptures to explain why things are the way they are. The rhetorical tropes effectively discourage any other way of thinking as immoral and without God's will. It is a distinctive my way or the highway mentality that is broadcasted to the audience using both connotative and denotative qualities. As Paul explains, the associated meanings and connotative levels are not fully naturalized from the perspective of the audience. This text is trying to influence the ideology as natural through the encoding aspect of truthfulness. Examining this text of the interview and the interpretations of the suggestions, we see Falwell trying to influence the watching audience with his brand of fear-breaks persuasion. Another aspect at the end of this transcript was the word amen, which is usually used after a Christian prayer, and supposedly newsworthy interview to prayer-like text before Robertson's amen. Both men are using the term amen after the other person speaks. This particular word means that what is said before the content as true and just. Again, we must examine these two individuals as leaders of many, that they agree, affirm, and confirm that which is in turn encoded to the viewing audience. By connotation, this demonization of what can be inferred to as marginal others to the audience can be persuaded to believe that these words are indubitably true. His rhetorical propaganda forms an ideological box of sorts, and anything outside this box is considered an enemy of the moral values he preaches. The parameters of this box are off limits, not only to the Democratic Party, but also to homosexuals, feminists, abortionists, the ACLU, and other entities that do not consider Falwell's train of thought. He blatantly abuses his authority as a man of God to persuade followers that his way is the only way, the right way.